Off the Wall Productions is proud to present Voices of the Methow. This is a series of conversations with interesting folk in and around the valley.
Hey, this is Byron, and I have Sharon Cohen here with me. Welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thanks for having me, Byron. I'm excited to try to do this with you.
We're going to have a conversation on Mindfulness Based Stress Reduction. But first, Sharon, could you give a brief introduction of yourself for those of us who might not be familiar with you?
Okay, I was born in New York City and grew up kind of in the metropolitan area. I moved to the Bay Area in my late teens and ended up moving to the Valley in 1984 to work for the Forest Service. I worked on the Winthrop Trail Crew for about 5 summers and ended up doing a few different things and then moved here permanently in 1993. And at that time, I was the director of the Confluence Art Gallery, which seems a very long time ago. Yeah.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Yeah.
There's so much I don't know about people in the valley here. So, mindfulness-based stress reduction. That's a mouthful. Can you please describe what it is and what you are doing with it?
I will try. It is really hard to describe mindfulness. So mindfulness-based stress reduction is a structured 8-week class developed by Dr. Kabat-Zinn to help people live with more ease. He helped people live more easily with chronic pain.
That was kind of the basis of what started his interest in this or something, to see the effects of?
He had a personal meditation practice.
Okay.
And while he was on retreat, he described a 9-second inspiration to bring mindfulness to medical patients. He was a research biologist at a teaching hospital, the University of Massachusetts. And when he came back from retreat, he spoke to some physicians and asked them to refer the patients that they could not help to him. And most of them struggled with chronic pain. And within a year, he was so successful that they made the stress reduction program officially part of the Department of Medicine.
Wow.
So today we use the course to help people with chronic pain, but also everyday stress or stress in times of transition. I mean, stress is epidemic. The world has only gotten more and more stressful. And so there's no end of need for tools to help us work with it.
So Sharon, what have you noticed in the classes that you're teaching? What are some common benefits that students or participants experience?
I think people get better at simplifying their lives. I think that almost everyone has a feeling of not having enough time. And I think that the class helps people think about life differently. So we see that we make time for things that are really important and let go of some of the things that are not so important. We get more intentional about the way we use our time and our mental energy, more patient with ourselves and with each other, and more compassionate. A lot more self-compassion. My root practice were compassion-based practices for the first 10 or 15 years of practice. And so I bring a lot of that into the 8-week MBSR class.
So you're kind of bringing in a practice that you've established, as well as, like you're saying, the doctor who developed this had a practice beforehand, and so you're kind of also adding to what you're doing from where you came.
Exactly.
Like okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you know, in the for the sake of full disclosure, you know, I actually took a class with you about 5 years ago. That seems amazing that it was 5 years ago. You know, I looked over some notes I took during that class. Here is something I wrote down about a situation that I found challenging to deal with in the moment and got caught up in worry. And here's what I wrote. So summing up, I spent at least 3 hours thinking about this thing, invested some tension in my body for a situation that actually took less than a minute to resolve. And I realized that my power lies in the actual moments I'm engaged in real time. And that sounds profound, but I really want to thank you because I'm still using some of the tools that you gave me from that class. That was one of them, just the mindfulness, to observe the situation I was in and to see how fast it actually did resolve, in the moment when I was actually out of my head and talking to a person on the phone about it.
So what other tools are you still using? I would love to hear that.
Yeah, well, the body scan for one, where you go over all the parts of your body slowly, methodically, and perhaps send some compassion to certain areas needing special attention. That achy knee or ankle, for example. And I find it particularly helpful for those times I have trouble sleeping. I note the state of my being before I begin and after I finish, and I'm always amazed at how much calmer and relaxed it feels. I've used the meditation and yoga tapes you provided as well, where you guide verbally through a yoga routine or a guided visualization. Thanks for that.
Oh, those are part of the way John Kabat-Zinn designed the class. So in order for me to call it MBSR, I needed to record these 4 CDs, which was really hard for me. I'm in awe of your equipment here.
Thank you. This is KTRT coming to you. Thank you, Don. Yes.
And he just, the class has been refined over 30 years. He did a great job in distilling many different practices into some practices that people can make part of their lives, over 2 months. And you do have to dedicate some time during the class. But after that, the tools that we have, I think, create space in our life, simplify our relationships, and help us prioritize what's really important.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if you're willing to put the time in to put some energy and time into it, there are benefits that can be derived from it, but you got to do something. You're not just going to hand stuff out to people that wave your magic wand and have them get better. It's kind of like a personal...
You have to put some effort into it. It's... Mindfulness has become maybe a little misunderstood in popular culture as something that can change or be effective with very little effort or in very small doses. And what I've found and what the research has shown is that it's actually dose responsive. The more you practice, the more time you put in, the more effect it has on you, and the more accessible and effective the tools are for you.
Well, it's cool how my experience was it was that you put on a really good class. The tools were effective for me. So a friend of mine was talking to me about practice the other day, and he had a phrase that kind of stuck with me. It's practice makes permanent. And so if you're practicing in a way that may not actually be as beneficial as it could be, that's what's important. I mean, you've got with this doctor has set up something that's already, you're using it basically, and you're adding to it, no doubt, with as you go, obviously. I mean,
yeah, it's personalized.
Yes.
And people personalize it after they take the class. I mean, that's part of the class. You have so many tools. You can choose which ones are the most helpful or the best fit for your life.
Yeah. So, we're kind of focusing on the class you're doing now. That's at a lot at Winthrop Fitness right now, right?
Winthrop Fitness, yeah.
Do you have any other classes going this year? I know are you in the middle of one right now, or just finishing?
We're in the middle of a class. Yeah, we're just about coming up to the 4th week. And during the summer, I do a class called Mindfulness at the Speed of Life for kind of working parents and teachers and people that legitimately don't have the time for a long class. The 8-week class is a 2-hour class and asks for quite a bit of home practice time. And the Mindfulness at the Speed of Life is more emphasis on intentionally integrating mindfulness into activities we're already doing. So if we remember, we can brush our teeth mindfully.
Yeah, right.
Mindfulness is easy to do and hard to remember.
Yeah. And also, you have ongoing drop-in classes like on Mondays?
Yeah,
Talk
yeah.
more about that, would you?
Sure. So we have ongoing drop-in classes Monday night, and these are at the Methow Valley Wellness Center. So Dr. Sierra Brightbeel's building, that's
Right next
tucked away
to
behind Little Star.
Little Star, yeah.
And so those classes really began at the request of people who took the 8-week class and wanted to continue to meet. And it's really blossomed. It was Monday nights were becoming so big that we added a Friday afternoon, and that's a little bit earlier. It's from 4 to 5:30. And so we talk more about the philosophy, some new techniques, and incorporate a 40-minute practice period of some silent and some guided sitting practice. And we have a core group that's been really loyal, and now we've expanded to 2 retreats a year. We've been doing them at the River Run Inn, and this is the first year the first consecutive fall and spring where we have 2 5-day retreats. So it's really exciting. We have a thriving practice community here.
Yeah, and one thing I've done a couple day mindfulness sessions at the wellness building, and what I really appreciated and enjoyed was that it's you break it up into sitting for a while and then standing, walking,
Yeah.
and then there's some perhaps maybe even a talk, like a recorded talk or something.
Yeah. So we have this other sort of format that we've been doing one afternoon a month during the winter months, where it's completely silent practice, alternating sitting, 45 minutes of sitting and 15 minutes of walking. And then we play a recorded talk by Tara Brock. And she's a senior teacher in the Insight meditation community and also a practicing psychologist. So her talks are very psychology based, and so they can appeal or be useful to anyone. And those have it's for those afternoons you can come for an hour or for the whole afternoon. It's up to the individual.
And so it's kind of like on the hour, is that kind of deal where you're free to drop in? Any hour. That is so cool.
So our next one is March 11th.
March
actually.
11th.
And that's the last one of the winter.
And that's at the Wellness Center by Little Star.
Yeah, noon to 5.
Noon to 5.
Yeah.
Okay, on the 11th March.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's good. Well, Sharon, could you speak a little bit about the physiology of what I know there's a lot of science that goes along with this work that you're doing. Could you speak a little bit to just, the what's going on in the body as well as the mind? Or?
Sure. Yeah, that's the power behind mindfulness, and what makes it really unique is that we're changing the body on a cellular level by learning how to engage the body's ability to calm itself down. And before I go, I'd like to share a little really short breathing practice so people can get a little bit of a feeling for how to do that.
And absolutely, yeah.
But basically, every thought that we have, we're either deepening an existing pattern that we have, whether it's useful or not, or we could use our thoughts to make a new neural pathway that we know will be more helpful, healthier. So mindfulness is an intentional way of paying attention. And it brings some kindness to our inner life when ordinarily we tend to be very hard on ourselves. And so mindfulness teaches us to recognize that, and once we recognize it, we have a choice. We can choose to bring some kindness in and to strengthen our ability to be kind to ourselves, and then that we bring that kindness out to all of our relationships. Or we can do what we've been doing all of our lives.
Which we're really good at, doing the same thing over and over.
Right, right. So what psychologists say is that every thought leaves a neural trace. And the thoughts or the sort of patterns that we have become neural superhighways, and we fall into them like a rut, quicker and quicker and more easily. And mindfulness helps us to start forging a new pathway that's actually more effective, more helpful, more pleasant.
Didn't you make an analogy? This is coming back to me, like the needle in a groove of a record.
Yeah.
And that you can scratch the record across and break up the
Yeah, you can do that. You can just, from a certain point, go off in a different direction. And after we do that a few times, that direction gets easier to find.
Right.
So we'll find that even after you've taken the class and practiced for a long time, when you're under stress, when you're hungry or tired, that's when you're going to fall back into those older patterns. It's not that we make them go away. We just add newer ones that are more skillful. We use the language of skillfulness and unskillfulness because there's less judgment in there.
Yeah.
More kindness.
Sharon, can you talk about the pause?
Yes, that's one of the great benefits of practice. We learn to recognize when we're about to do something or say something that we might regret later. And in that pause, we have a choice to take a deep breath and say, can't really talk about this right now, or to go in another direction. Basically, to think about what the effects of our behavior are going to be before we do something that we regret. And it's not a very long amount of time. Seriously, meditators and psychologists call it the magic quarter second. That's as long as we have to make a better decision, to go against our pattern or the urge to say something dominating that might possibly hurt someone and damage a relationship.
So those neural pathways that you've been creating kind of help perhaps in that quarter second too, maybe, huh?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
So the practice of just returning attention to the breath, and it's probably the most common practice that people associate with mindfulness meditation. But when we're doing that, we're interrupting the momentum of wherever our mind, which is usually our ego, wants to go, and it's thinking about something it wants or it doesn't want. And if we get good at interrupting that and coming back to the breath, that will help us in real life interrupt the flow of energy when we're opening our mouth and about to say something that's going to be hurtful or unskillful. Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally makes sense. In fact, that's why you would be practicing, isn't it? To be able to put it in the moment in your life where it actually matters.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not for that experience on the cushion or the chair. It's to go through our lives with more grace and ease and really kindness.
Grace and ease and kindness.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds good to me.
Yeah.
So Sharon, could you demonstrate a little of the practice you're talking about, please?
So for those of you who are driving, keep both hands on the wheel. For those of you who are not driving, you might take one hand and let it rest on your low abdomen. And for everyone, as you inhale, see if you can send a little of that breath to expand your low abdomen. It doesn't have to be all of it, just some of it. And as you breathe out, contract your abdomen towards the spine. And work with that until it can feel natural and easy. So the air goes into the abdomen and it expands a little bit like a balloon. And as you breathe out, it deflates. If we can do that breath and make our inhales and exhales approximately even, so it's a comfortable, slow, even breath. The body's sympathetic nervous system engages, the ability for the body to slow down and calm down. And that will allow us to think more clearly, respond intentionally rather than react emotionally. So I try to teach that breath to everyone who I see, even for just the introductory presentation, because it's such a great tool. Are you sensing your body slowing down at all, Byron?
Oh, I was zoning there. I got to admit that was really nice, just to take a minute and to be able to just feel my abdomen and my breath. Yes.
Yeah. So the trick is remembering to practice that breath when we're not stressed, to make it a tool that's available and accessible for us when we do need it in a moment of reactivity. I teach it to everyone, and I teach it to children in the community school, and I find that they share it with their parents.
Nice. Yeah.
So it's easy, it's available, and it's always appropriate.
Well, Sharon, this has been great. Is there anything that we might have missed or that you want to say before we wrap up?
Not that I can think of offhand. People, if anyone is interested in mindfulness that's happening in the Valley or just looking at some of the research, I maintain a website at mindfulmethow.com. It always has a calendar and a huge page of links to research about different illnesses or different ways mindfulness can be helpful.
And that was?
mindfulmethow.com.
mindfulmethow.com. Well, that's great. So Sharon, thanks so much for having this conversation.
Thanks, Byron, for inviting me. It's been great to connect with you again.
Absolutely. So this is Byron and
Sharon
saying
blessings to you and keep it on the root.
You've been listening to Voices of the Methow, an off-the-wall production. Until next time, thanks for listening.